Hey guys, Eric Knight here. Today is January 2nd, 2013, and in the news today, probably what I would say worst case scenario with this fiscal cliff deal is Congress came together I think last night and they signed on to this deal. And we have averted this so-called fiscal cliff we've been talking about here for the last several months. Now, more than anything, what happens with this is tax increases, more or less for those individuals making $400,000 plus a year, and couples filing jointly making $450,000 a year. Another one is capital gains for these individuals and couples going from 15 to 20%. There are some changes in the estate taxes, and one that will affect everybody is the Social Security tax. I believe that's going to go up by back to 6.2%, which, say for instance, I heard on the news today, an individual making $50,000 a year can expect to see at least $1,000 less in his take-home pay this next year. So this does actually affect a lot of people. Now, probably the worst thing about this deal is kicking the can down the road, absolutely no spending cuts. And if you think about it, there really wasn't any real spending cuts, even if we did go off the fiscal cliff. It's baseline budgetary cuts. It's not real spending cuts. It's just avoiding projected increases in the future. So the one thing that they needed to do more than anything is the one thing that they're completely ignoring. And politicians right now are patting themselves on the back. You know, they set politics aside and they came together and they saved the middle class. And that's, I think, not the case. I think where the middle class really is getting completely screwed in this is trying to pay for the cost of government. Government's gone wild. Government's getting huge. If you look at how much is going out every single year, and like I said before in another video, we're in QE4. Well, I mean, it was already QE to infinity, and now we up the ante. And that started, I believe, yesterday. So the Fed's printing $85 billion a month. You may not notice it coming out of your paycheck, but you're losing your purchasing power. It's not going to happen in the immediate, next couple days, but later on down the road here, prices are going to start to skyrocket. We're printing an enormous amount of money, and there's no end in sight. So that should be a huge concern. I did find it pretty interesting. I saw this other article. There were some business tax cuts included in this. I believe something like $63 billion. Find this article here. This was from the Los Angeles Times, and these tax cuts were given to rum makers, racetrack owners, railroads, and Hollywood studios. Believe it or not. I found that to be pretty interesting. Wow. The real producers in this country, those business owners, that would be probably more or less the people that do make $400,000+ a year. Their taxes are going up, so I don't really see a whole heck of a lot of private sector growth. More than anything, I see growth of government. Now, the other scary part of this, real quick, is I think at some point the rest of the world is gonna catch on to this. Again, we have politicians that are not serious about making any spending cuts and coming to the understanding that this United States government is not capable of repaying these debts with all this money that we have borrowed. I think once that happens, the real crash is soon to follow. So this, I believe, does escalate the process. This will speed things up. I think this should be a huge concern. I think this was worst case scenario. Like I had said before, this was the last thing I wanted to see, is them coming together and having some last minute deal trying to avert this fiscal cliff. If anything, there needed to be more compromise. It sounds like the Democrats and Obama got their way. They got the tax increases, but there's absolutely no spending cuts. And like I've also said before, nobody is serious about addressing the entitlement spending, and that is what's going to be the end of us. We spend a ridiculous amount of money on these entitlements. These are the things that politicians can promise us, promises they can't keep, to get elected into office. And the way I'm beginning to see this more and more and more is, quite frankly, again, the politicians do not give a damn about you, your family, or anybody but themselves. The only thing they care about is making promises they can't keep in order to retain their positions of power. It's unfortunate, but I really wish more people saw it. I see a lot of people on a daily basis that, they love this Social Security check. They love the Medicare. These programs are already bankrupt. It's a Ponzi scheme. The money has to come from somewhere, and there's not a trust fund set up somewhere with a bunch of cash in it. The government spends every single dime and then much, much more than it brings in every single year. So we really need to address the spending problem. This, again, it's predictable. It's further proof that our government and our politicians are not serious about saving this country. So that's my take on this. I think today was a huge loss for America by averting this fiscal cliff. As much as I didn't want to pay more taxes, I'd be willing to definitely pay more taxes if we could have spending cuts, or at least try to get this government solvent again. I think that's important, just for the future of this country and, future of everybody's kids someday. So that's my take on this. Feel free to post your comments. Thank you for tuning in. We'll have much more to talk about later on tomorrow.